Well, y'all are a great crowd. I've never seen a crowd spontaneously sit down like that. That's very impressive. I'm Peter Kovacs. I'm the editor of The Advocate, and it's great to see so many of you here so early in the day. When I saw all the cars out in the parking lot at sunup, I thought Joe Savoy was taking us fishing. But I guess he's not. Nope. When I came to Louisiana 35 years ago from Alabama. And these days, you don't want to tell people that you came here from Alabama. But when I was in Alabama, I worked as a business reporter, and I discovered that being a business reporter was tougher than I expected, because while the mayor has to talk with you, the guy who runs the steel plant doesn't. So I'm happy to discover that 35 years later, Judy Terzotis and Kristen Askelson and Adam Daigle have lured these 12 business leaders to be here today answering my questions and yours. This is a great and promising time for The Advocate and for journalism in Acadiana. 3 weeks ago, Fred Camback and I were here meeting with the leading journalists of this community and coaxing them to swap over and join the Acadiana Advocate. We had to do it stealthily. We met with Claire Taylor at the ice cream shop next to our office on Johnston Street. We visited Kristen Askelson at Johnston Street, Java, and we met with Kevin Foote, who was very nervous because he can't go anywhere in town without being recognized. So I'm still not going to tell you the secret place where we met with him. One thing we learned is that these great journalists were frustrated with Gannett and with its continual disinvestment in Louisiana, which ironically is the same sentiment I hear around town when I talk with the great leaders of this community. So we're glad to welcome Kristen and Claire and Kevin and Megan Wyatt and James Beers and Sherry Puderman to our team. And there's more to come. Because one thing I've learned from 6 years as editor of The Advocate is that the people of Louisiana want and deserve and will support great journalism. And there's nobody here more passionate about Louisiana than Dathel and John Georges. And John's here with us today, and he actually woke up and drove from New Orleans this morning. So I was pretty impressed. So what we're going to do today is we're going to ask our panelists to make brief remarks about the prospects for 2019 in their areas of expertise. And then we have Kristen and Adam Daigle, who are all the way on the other end of the table. I can barely see them. Adam joined us last year as business editor in Acadiana, and they're going to ask questions, and we'll take questions from the audience. And then we have Kyle Whitfield, who's right over there, who's our digital editor, and he'll field questions through social media from folks who are watching the webcast. We'll start off, we have 4 terrific sponsors for today's event: Acadian Companies, Entergy, Home Bank, and Lafayette General. And we're going to start off with a brief welcome from 2 of them. First, from Joe Zanko of Home Bank.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is a great crowd. Thank you to John, Judy, and The Advocate for putting today's message on. We're sponsors today because, like you, we came to learn. So with that, I'm going to shut my mouth, sit down, and listen. Thank you.
Okay. And also from David Calicote.
Thanks, Peter. By the way, your opening comments, that's exactly how you build a health system as well. So good job.
Well, I don't think you want us in that business.
Well, you're going to hear later that really it's not very exciting for many people. But on behalf of Lafayette General, I want to welcome everybody here. Lafayette General, I have the pleasure of serving as president of that organization for the past little over 10 years. Lafayette General is by far the largest private employer, west of the Chaffalay Basin, all the way to the Texas border. We are your not-for-profit community hospital, and we have the honor of taking care of this entire region as the Level 2 trauma center. So it's very important for us to be involved in these type of events and supporting certainly economic development and improving the health of our entire region. And so I look forward to the discussions today. I think it's going to be very insightful as we talk about all the various challenges that we have in our industries. And I would just echo Joe's comments to John and Judy. Really building a good product here in the market, and we're honored to be a part of this event. Thank you.
We're glad to have you. We're going to start out with, we're going to go down the line, and we're going to start out with Troy Wayman. Troy joined One Acadiana as its president and CEO just over a year ago. He previously served as vice president for economic development for the Mobile Area Chamber of Commerce in the state that we're not allowed to talk about. In his first year at the helm, One Acadiana initiatives resulted in $23 million in capital investment, 282 retained jobs, and 477 new jobs for the region. So congratulations on a great first year.
Thank you.
You have to talk into the mic.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to say you came 35 years ago from that state. I came a year ago, and you said just over a year ago. It was a year and 4 days ago. So it is just over a year.
They'll cleanse it out of you slowly.
Yeah. Well, the first question I was asked by most people is if I'm an Alabama fan, and I said no, I'm an Auburn fan. And apparently, that's a lot more palatable around here than an Alabama fan.
We are too.
You know, we're very fortunate here in Acadiana. If you look at the growth that we've had over the past couple of years, and if you look at what we have right now as far as economic development, as far as jobs, potential capital investment that we have in the pipeline right now, it's pretty amazing. I will say that right now, it's easier for me to say this. I can take credit for everything that's happened before now, but if you look at where we've been, we're an organization that's only been a regional organization for 4 years. We're in our 5th year of existence as a regional organization. We work with a network of local partners like LIDA, that is a major investor in our organization, and we work closely with them and with other partners across the region to work on economic development projects, to bring jobs, to create jobs, to preserve jobs. Those jobs that were mentioned, that Peter mentioned to start with, the 383 retained jobs. One of the things that we have to remember about those jobs is those are jobs that potentially would have gone elsewhere had those expansions not happened in our region, and they didn't. They didn't go elsewhere because they realized the workforce and the possibilities that they have here in Acadiana. The other thing that I will mention is right now, currently in our pipeline, projects that we have that are I don't want to spoil anything, Mr. Secretary, but I won't. Don't worry. But projects that we have in the pipeline that are in the final stages of negotiation, totaling a little over $300 million in capital investment. And you heard that number right, $300 million. And those are projects that we have those are just the ones that we have that are outside the Lafayette metro area. Those are ones that we have that are in other parishes in the 9-parish Acadiana region. So if you look at that type of capital investment, that gets and I realize that a lot of this seems to be anecdotal, but if you look at those numbers, and it gives you a lot of hope that things are looking up. You look at the trend, last year in this region alone, we added just over 2,000 jobs in December. Just in December, so that's year after year growth. The state itself, and I don't want to steal any of the Secretary's thunder, but 19,000 jobs since December 2017, bringing the total number of non-farm jobs in Louisiana to just over 2 million. So we're seeing a lot of positive things. Are we where we were before things, the bottom fell out in Acadiana in the energy sector? We're not. But we're making significant progress. I think the days of the double-digit unemployment and the significant job losses are finally behind us. It is kind of a double-edged sword. And you go to the pump and you get to buy gas for under $2 a gallon. It seems great for your pocketbook, but you look at it from the different perspective when you live in Acadiana, and you realize that that's not necessarily great for our region. So we are cautiously optimistic about the diversification of our economic base in the region. We're seeing a lot of positive things. I mean, these jobs that we're seeing created are not just in the energy sector; they're across the board. So the more that we have that type of diversification, and one of the greatest examples of it is sitting at the table up here with us with CGI and Will LeBar and the work that Greg Gautreaux and Lita did with that project, bringing them to Lafayette. So we're very excited about. We're very optimistic and very bullish on the future, and we're keeping our powder dry, and I think we're going to, hopefully we'll see some, again, not to spoil anything, hopefully we'll see some announcements in the area in the very near future.
Thank you. I guess I need this back. Thank you. Bill Fenstermacher, who told me he recently had a birthday, is chairman and chief executive officer of Fenstermacher and Associates, an engineering firm and surveying company founded by his grandfather in New Iberia. He's been chairman of the board of Iberia Bank since 1999 and also serves on the board of trustees of Lafayette General Medical Center, the Community Foundation of Acadiana, and the Louisiana Tennis Foundation.
Thank you, Peter. You know, when I was asked to speak, I asked, what do you want me to speak on? And y'all said energy. So I did a lot of homework on energy in the last couple of days. I am in the energy business. I just returned from Houston for North American Prospect Expo, which is probably one of the biggest shows in the world on energy prospects. And I hate to say anything negative, but at the show I looked around for Louisiana-based prospects and I didn't see any. So something that I kind of knew that since basically this administration, we've had very little drilling in South Louisiana, that the majority of what we have going on in energy is in North Louisiana and the Haynesville, and that's to hold leases a lot and also to do the unit surveys to pay production royalty, which they have to do. Now, how does that affect us in Louisiana? In a way, I figured that, and this is just my thought process, I wanted to look at revenue and what difference does this make in revenue to the state. And in looking at the numbers, and I went through them twice because I was very concerned that maybe I wasn't gleaning all the information. But it appears that we have about a $750 million shortfall in the last 3 years in Louisiana from mineral revenue. And that's not necessarily good. We are feeling a little bit feel better about oil and gas because now we have 18 rigs running in the Gulf of Mexico. Last year at this time we probably had 7. So a lot of your service companies are starting to feel, and feels good, but still we're not where we really need to be, and that's because of Macondo. It's not necessarily because of state, but and some of the policies. But I guess what's happened when you talk to energy leaders in Houston is they say we're not coming to Louisiana, and we need to fix that. And the reason we need to fix it is because of this $750 million in tax revenue that we're down compared to 3 years ago. And so I hope that going forward we send a little bit of a message. I got a license plate the other day that says Louisiana is the energy state, and I hope that we continue to pound that drum a little bit, and that we understand that we are the energy state, that we have tremendous capabilities to produce energy here. We have tremendous natural resources, and we need to take advantage of that. So I guess those are my opening comments. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. One thing I learned when I was a young business writer is that if you wanted to figure out what was going to happen in the local economy, that the lawyers and the bankers always knew something about it, but one unexpected person who always knew something about it was the guy who runs the power company, because anything that was going to be built was going to require a hookup to power. Philip May is the president and chief executive officer of Entergy Louisiana, which serves more than 1 million electric customers in the state. He's responsible for the company's customer service, regulatory and public affairs, resource planning, economic development programs, charitable contributions, as well as its financial performance. He also serves on the boards of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, GNO, the Louisiana Nature Conservancy, Teach for America of South Louisiana, City Year of Baton Rouge, and Second Harvest Food Bank.
Thank you, Peter. You know, one of the things that and you note that the utilities are usually involved in economic development. It's not just because it's one of the first places that you go to get your power turned on, and we also serve gas in Baton Rouge and New Orleans. But the other part of that is, unlike almost any other business that you know, our assets are either buried in the ground, nailed into the ground with our poles and plants and so forth. If we don't like the economic outcomes that we see in the areas we serve, it's not very easy to pick up our assets and move them somewhere else. So we're vested in ensuring that the regions that we serve have economic development as a key part of what we do. And a couple of things that I want you to know about how we're doing in Louisiana and what we're doing with Entergy is, first of all, 3 points. One is Louisiana has the lowest electric rates in the U.S. 2, we are number 1 for foreign direct investment per capita for the past 10 years in the U.S. And the third point on this, for that same 10-year period, we are second in the U.S. for industrial growth in electricity sales, only behind North Dakota. And by the way, not to disparage North Dakota, but if you start from a very small base, adding 2 refrigerators might double your sales. But part of that growth that you're seeing is because of the assets that Louisiana has. We have a great workforce. We have low natural gas prices, which is spurring a lot of the industrial growth that we're seeing. And as I mentioned, and the thing that I will continue to mention, you may hear me mention this more than once, low electricity prices. That is driving an incredible amount of growth in this region and throughout the Gulf Coast, primarily between the Mississippi River Corridor, Baton Rouge to New Orleans, but also in the Acadiana region and southwest Louisiana. The other thing I'd like you to know is that Louisiana is consistently ranked over the last 11 years in the top 10 for economic development. It's ranked number 7 in Area Developed Magazine's annual top 10 states for doing business. It's also placed number 3 in the nation for leading workforce development, number 6 in favorable general regulatory environments and business incentive programs. Those programs are very important and part of how we attract business to the state of Louisiana. So I'm very excited to be here today and to be talking about economic development because, as I mentioned, without economic development, our prospects are not very good. So we have a vested interest in that. Very pleased to be part of this panel to talk about how we can do better on economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. David Calicote is president of Lafayette General Health. Calicote began his employment at Lafayette General Medical Center as president and chief executive officer in 2008. In 2013, he was named president of Lafayette General Health. Under his leadership, Lafayette General has experienced rapid improvement in both patient satisfaction and quality measurement while expanding the hospital staff, its regional network, and its award-winning care.
Thank you, Peter. So to give you an update with Lafayette General, let's start with a little history. So 10 years ago, we were about a $170 million entity in net revenue, and today we represent a system with almost $800 million in net revenue annually. And when you add our partners, we're over a $1 billion entity that takes care of patients throughout the region. We finished last year certainly on a good note in terms of hitting our expectations, and this year we're busy as well, and we're on track. So that's the good news. But healthcare in general is on the precipice of just the most change that we could ever see, and it's happening extremely rapidly. I'm closing in, it's hard to believe, I'm actually closing in my 3rd decade of being involved in healthcare administration, and the winds of change that are heading toward healthcare are as significant as I've ever seen before. The reason, healthcare now consumes 1/5 of our overall budget as a nation, and when you look at that and you look at the cost of healthcare, we have to change the way we're doing things. And so in general, while we are in an era right now where we're still in a fee-for-service sort of business where we get paid per visit, we're moving to an era where we get paid solely on value and the value that we deliver to our patients. So when you look at that and you look at the disruptors that are in healthcare, it used to be who was across town was your competitor. It used to be perhaps who was in a larger metropolitan area was your competitor, or a destination center. Those are still out there and certainly a concern, but our competitors now have become people you wouldn't even think of. Amazon, Google, Apple. All of these folks are disrupting healthcare in a way that really we never anticipated. And it really has to do with keeping folks healthy, keeping them well, keeping them out of the acute care episode. And so at Lafayette General, we're extremely focused on consumerism and really changing the way we are delivering care and we're interfacing with the patient. I mentioned these disruptors, the Amazon, Google, Apples of the world. They're really focused on consumers that are vertical, okay? In healthcare, we've always considered patients as our patients. The people that live in our market are our patients. But patients are really the only ones that are horizontal. So at the main campus right now, we have about 400 people that are laying horizontal in beds. Those are the patients that we're guaranteed to get in the future. All of the disruptors that I'm talking about are concerned about the patients that are standing up and vertical and can make choice. And will make choices using their mobile device. They will make choices based on what is most convenient place to receive care. They are determining for themselves, how they want care, where they want care, and at what price they want care. And so from our hospital standpoint, we can no longer bank upon patient loyalty or brand. It really is about, are you providing the consumers the easiest, most efficient way for them to receive the care? So we're very focused on removing friction from our system, making it easier for our patients to access our system. You have seen, hopefully, over the last few months, an extreme focus on telemedicine. As an organization, we now have one of the largest telemedicine networks in the state, and certainly we have, in partnership with school systems and others, a large telemedicine presence in schools as well as businesses throughout the region. A shameless plug, we also have rolled out Health Anywhere, which is our mobile technology to allow urgent care visits via your phone. And that will be going public. We're currently doing it for our employees only, but it's a way in which patients can receive that care again on their own terms. We're bullish about certainly the future of healthcare in Acadiana. We've seen great improvements in the main campus performance as well as all of our affiliate facilities. And we certainly have done and been able to improve GME, graduate medical education, for the future doctors of this community through our efforts in our public-private partnership with University Hospital and Clinics. And so as we move forward, we're going to be very focused certainly on continuing to do what we've always done, but we're also focused on delivering value to the businesses and the industries in this community to again help them keep their employees healthier, but also to, at the end of the day, reduce the cost of healthcare for this community.
Thank you very much. Flo Meadows, who joined Latter & Blum in 2018, has 25 years of commercial real estate experience, including brokerage, acquisition and development, financial analysis, and consulting. She's a graduate of the University of Louisiana at Lafayette with an accounting major and a French minor, and she remains involved with the university in volunteer leadership roles.
Thank you, Peter. Much appreciated. Commercial real estate, as we know it, is all about people and their places. And we're seeing huge shifts in the rankings of what's important to the growth companies and where they're locating. So for the first time, your real estate commercial marketplaces fall into 5th place. What is now 1st place is workforce. So it is absolutely all about people. And they want to locate into a region that is going to produce the workforce that they need. So we have to shift our attention to what it is that we need to know in order to position our commercial real estate. 2nd place is customers and consumers. Where are they concentrated? Then they look to the growth economies around those concentrations. They look to what their competitors are doing and where are their competitors locating. And then commercial real estate marketplace is now in 5th place. So in the global economy as we know it, disruption and innovation is on every front. And so while they present challenges, they also point to opportunities. So today I'll touch lightly on challenges and opportunities for commercial real estate as we go forward, framing that conversation in innovation and disruption on the one hand, and leadership on the other hand, since so much of it is geared towards your people. So innovation and disruption happening with many industries. We've just heard David talk about what it's doing with healthcare. So as it shifts what's happening in industries, it also shifts what happens with how we use our office space, how we use real estate. So how we work, where we work, how we shop, where we shop, and how we invest in commercial real estate and where we are able to invest in commercial real estate. So how we work, if you look at WeWork as a company, in less than 10 years, a $42 billion valuation. Their product, short-term office rentals. But what they have done is intentionally innovated office space for connectivity of people, creativity, and innovation. In shopping, we all know the shifts that are occurring with e-commerce. So Amazon, of course, leading the way in what we're seeing there, which is causing disruptions in distribution and adaptive reuse of real estate. It's also driving massive investments by retailers in technology. So the new buzzword for retail is experiential retail. So it has to be family friendly and have many activities to engage the family and dining. And so that's what we look to see happening. Our Acadiana Mall, our regional 1 million square foot mall, has recently changed hands, new owners, and we're looking for them to bring us experiential retail. So how we invest in commercial real estate and where we invest. The shifts that we're seeing is use, as we just talked about, but it's also in marketing and funding. So I touched on adaptive reuse for office and retail. It's also happening in distribution and hospitality. There's a company by the name of Sonder that is doing short-term leasing of massive blocks of hotel space across our country. They're already in New Orleans. So look for more shifts in how our real estate is being used. So how we're marketing it is shifting based on technology. We now have global platforms like Crexi and 10X that are positioning us to put commercial real estate in front of much larger pools of buyers. And we do that using drone imagery, virtual tours via Matterport. We have artificial intelligence doing lease abstractions, and all of that contributing to a shift in what's happening with that real estate and better positioning tertiary markets to gain a broader audience. In the funding of real estate, you know, for the past decade or more, I've attended dozens of commercial real estate conferences. And what we're seeing are strategic structures for investing in and developing real estate. And they're all P3, public-private partnerships, and it's requiring, in many cases, a philanthropic slice. So P3 done well removes the pain points, allows you to strategically have your development come in on time, on budget, and align what it is you're looking to make happen with your region's needs. So as I look at that, I view it as an opportunity. We are either going to look to best practices for P3 in our region and embrace the necessity for P3, or we're not going to do that. So I really view that as being one of our top opportunities. You know, in his book, Connectography, Parag Khanna has 50 thematic maps, if you will, of the 50 mega regions of the future. And he said our destiny is now connectography. It's no longer geography. So it is all about infrastructure and transportation, electrical grids, the Internet of Things. So as a region, we need to decide how much are we investing in our infrastructure, how connected are we becoming. Casey Conway is the chief economist for the CCIM Institute, and I recently saw him present economic disruptors under 2 letters of the alphabet. On the one hand, the A, on the other hand, the T. So the disruptors are Amazon, everything autonomous, artificial intelligence, adaptive reuse, aquaponics. So vertical agriculture is transforming land use across the globe. Affordable housing, and how do we account for commercial real estate? Major shifts in corporate balance sheets due to some accounting changes that are taking place. On the T side, it's Trump, it's the Tax Act, and what kind of investments those are driving. It's transportation, the remaking of our supply chain, trade and tariffs, and the 10-year interest rate. And we also have business disruptors taking place, as David just mentioned. So as we look at those, for years we've known about unicorns, the fast growth companies that reach $1 billion valuation. Well, we're now talking of decacorns, 10 billion, and super unicorns, 100 billion. And those are the companies that will absolutely change the way that we live, work, and play. And the speed at which they're developing is rather amazing. So for the past 4 years, 243 unicorns. Previous 4, there were only 57. So now the challenge becomes, how do we position ourselves, and how do we look for who we are as a region to absolutely maximize what's possible? Well, we live in what's called the golden triangle of gross domestic product. So if you look to Lake Erie to the north, Texas as the western base, and Florida as the eastern base, more than 50% of our country's GDP occurs within that triangle. And so what that means for us is it is now the logistics and distribution corridor for our country. And will we make the investments to grab the most out of the opportunities that occur there? And that takes me to leadership. Sir Thomas Newton said it best, "If I have seen further than others, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Garner Economics tells us that we will win or lose businesses and jobs based on the leadership of our region. So I wanted to just touch base today on a few of our leaders and what they're doing to maximize what might be possible for commercial real estate investment in our region. And I'll start with Dr. Natalie Harder, Chancellor of SLCC, just appointed to the National Labor and Economics Board. I look at Dr. Harder as being one of our nation's finest visionaries on the alignment of education, workforce, and economic development. She's building programs here for economic diversification. 500 business partnerships since her arrival. So that's strengthening our ability to retain and expand those businesses, but also starting the collaborative framework from which she can further align education and workforce and attract new business. She has developed an application software program at SLCC that supports companies in communicating their needs so that they can more quickly create the curriculum to meet those needs. And with the help of her healthcare partners, she has an RN program helping with the nursing shortage, and they've built a world-class health and sciences building on her campus. Thank you, Dr. Harder. In Evangeline Parish, a recently formed foundation under Investar Bank, Anita Fontenot, Dr. Gwen Fontenot, Eugene Fontenot, some major initiatives coming out of that newly formed foundation. They've already engaged Dr. Jeff Stewart at the university and 40 of his students in Project Engage, in which they are taking a look at revitalization of their cities, beginning with Ville Platte, doing one community at a time, an industrial park for economic development, and the promotion of tourism for community development. In St. Landry Parish, Bill Rodier is focusing leadership and their financial resources on infrastructure, taking a look at I-49 and their access and their interchanges. In education, sort of a strategic plan for the entire school district in that parish. And for commercial real estate, it's revitalization of the downtowns for Opelousas and Eunice. And he is very focused on certified sites, already having one certified, and he has 2 more in the works. And Secretary Pearson, I so want to thank you for what your people are doing to help us move the certification of sites that will drive further development. So thank you for that. So Acadiana, as we look at commercial real estate, it will absolutely require the investment in urban cores and disadvantaged areas. So the greatest commercial opportunity, in my estimation, in 19 and the years to come, are the opportunity zones that were formed by the Federal Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And under the leadership of Monique Boulay, we have strong efforts in our region to understand what that means as an opportunity, and most importantly, we already have a document, Acadiana's Opportunity Zone Prospectus, which talks about who we are and our resources and what might be possible, with much more to come from that body of work. So Monique, thank you for that. And as I look at Lafayette, it's a storyboard of one leader or a small group dating all the way back to the 1800s. It was the police jury that put in the 5 roads that led to us becoming the hub city. It was a very small group of people that brought us our beloved university, a $1 billion economic engine with over 100 million in annual research and over 3,000 tech jobs brought most recently. It was Mr. Fenstermaker, Clay Allen, and Matt Steller that worked tirelessly to secure $100 million for the UL Foundation. We thank you for that, Bill. It was 2 students from the university that saved the horse farm, and one of them now leads what will become our $30 million civic asset in the heart of our city, Moncus Park. So what's happening in real estate in 18? There was a 250% increase in commercial new construction permits. Arabella Senior Living amongst it, and 2 student living complexes, an affordable housing project. In 19, we will hopefully see the $15 million redevelopment of the old federal courthouse. That's in due diligence. The beginning of the $80 million airport expansion, bottle lofts at Four Corners. Phase 1 of Moncus Park at Horse Farm should open. CGI's 400 job expansion, Waiters 200 job expansion. We look for more to come. But these are all stories that I've shared about leaders that engage in moving their community forward. So I'd like to close with a challenge on love to you. In the days of our great-grandparents, they did their commercial real estate investing by the love and trust they had for their neighbors. They called them barn raisings, and they got together and built their futures together. So Peter Kageyami, in his book For the Love of Cities, says that in competitive cities that are progressively moving forward and competing, civic engagement is 30% and north of 30%. As I look at the numbers for Austin, they're at 32. As I look at our region, the number is 16. So the challenge is this: we have half of the leaders that we need at the table helping to move our region forward. So I would ask that our community step forward, and it's not the people in this room I'm asking because you're all leaders, absolutely, but that's what I'll be looking to do, is help more people step forward and lead, and to be the shoulders that those that come behind us will stand on to look into their futures. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Pearson was appointed LED Secretary in January 2016 by Governor John Bell Edwards. He served as Assistant Secretary and Senior Director of Business Development for LED since 2005. He's the Governor's primary representative to governmental officials, local communities, site selector consultants on all economic issues. Pearson has 27 years of economic development experience. It's good to have you.
Well, thank you so much. And from what I've heard, we can conclude this discussion right now. What an amazing array of facts and information, and all the both present and forward-looking opportunities that are out there. And at Louisiana Economic Development, we're your strong partner every day, oftentimes represented in your community by Troy Wayman and One Acadiana. For many, many years, my colleague Greg Gocho and Lita. It's going to get hard down there after we all go through and tick off all the good bullet points. And then would be remiss if I didn't say that really a strong economic development partner is Dr. Savoy and Ramesh Kamulia. I mean, today, it's about workforce. Workforce is the coin of the realm. And it's amazing what we have to accomplish in a very new and different way. The theme that you're hearing across this panel is that you live in an age of acceleration. What was happening 10 years ago, what was happening in the past, has been forever changed by technology in so many different ways, cutting across medical, cutting across logistics, cutting across manufacturing. You almost can't name a sector that hasn't been touched by this digital revolution. And several other major factors at play at the same time. The global economy. You no longer just compete with the southern states. You no longer just compete domestically inside the United States. Every day you compete globally. And Lafayette, very well aware of how the price of oil has allowed this town to rise and fall. We know at one time what the bumper sticker said. But those days are behind us. I think our fundamentals of staying very active and engaged in energy production and agriculture are very, very much important. But Greg will probably speak to this. It's been an amazing march towards the diversification of this economy. And that's a key element of what it's going to take to continue to not just survive, but grow. You're not allowed to live in a steady state. Tomorrow we'll either have more workers or fewer workers. Tomorrow your economy will either rise or fall. Fortunately, we've seen some great progress in our state. Since 2016, more than 130 projects. Last year alone, 47 major wins for us. And what I'm really pleased to say is that occurred in 31 parishes. Think about that. Of our 64, almost half were impacted with a new project. We've added 5,000 manufacturing jobs last year. And we love our service and support economy. And the small business fabric is so important, and we put a lot of focus on that small business fabric. But it's the manufacturing jobs that really bring home the bacon. They create the wealth in the community that powers the success of all of those small businesses and allows the real estate market to grow. I understand you sold more homes than ever before last year. Things are moving in this age of acceleration and this transformation to a digital economy and digital forces driving it. We're well positioned in this global economy because of the ports that we have that are outward facing, that allow us to export energy. For the first time now, the U.S. has surpassed Russia and Saudi Arabia as being the largest producer and exporter of energy. Not far from here, those LNG terminals, the refineries, and the advanced chemical manufacturing that's occurring in Lake Charles is just astonishing. The impacts of that will continue to be felt across the state. But we manage a collection of economies from Baton Rouge, Shreveport, Monroe, Alexandria, all of South Louisiana. Different requirements, different skill sets, different things that they bring to the table. But the commonality that we are fortunate to be experiencing today is that in many ways, while we continue to very much need to emphasize infrastructure and the growth of our infrastructure, we are keeping up with it. Philip May's got a great story to tell about new power plants that are being built so that these advanced chemical manufacturings can continue to expand their footprint in Louisiana. Across 4G and soon to be 5G networks, this idea of the cyber and fiber infrastructure is so important. And look where you sit in Lafayette as one of the most technically prepared cities in America because of this fiber that reaches every household and every business. It's absolutely amazing and one of the leading infrastructure elements that you can tout and talk about. And it is workforce and it is this infrastructure that makes that possible. But this workforce today is very mobile. So it's so important to have quality of place. And that's another major asset that you have in this community. Even if I go out to a groundbreaking or a ribbon cutting at Waiter, we're going to have a Zydeco band there, right? It doesn't happen anywhere else, I can assure you that. And quality of place is also a place where education is valued, where healthcare is valued. This is where people will go. We're fortunate also now, we've struggled through 16 and 17 facing a $2 billion deficit. But now we've finally reached a point of financial stability and a point where we can recognize perhaps a surplus, where now we have the ability to retire some of that accrued liability in our retirement system, and beyond that, begin to make some investments, much needed investments in infrastructure. And we've got a strong economic development team out there across this state, in your region and in other regions. You heard Philip touch on that as well. We're positioned to be very forward-looking. That's why CGI chooses to make their expansion here. That's why Waiter knows that they can step into this community and be successful, because we are able to do what I'll call best practices in the nation on the integration of our educational institutions with the needs and demands of workforce, as varied as they are, not just in the IT sector, but across the board. And Dr. Harder's leadership there is very evident in that regard. Beyond that, we'll look at advanced manufacturing. I know that proprietary issues, and sometimes people keep these stories quiet, but you have a world-class leader right around the corner at Stuller with additive manufacturing, that's 3D printing, robotics, oceaneering. Companies like that are bringing technology to the forefront. We're doing a lot around water management today, and I encourage you to fully embrace that as one of the important elements going forward. When we talk about water management, it ranges not just from flood, but from predictive elements. If you see a storm coming in the Gulf with big data, with cloud computing, you should know that in 72 hours it's going to drop 8 inches of water in downtown Houston. And you should get those folks out of those assisted living centers. And you should know where the transformer stations are that are going to go underwater and black out power, and take the appropriate actions in that preparation. That's the kinds of things that we're developing that have not just domestic scale, but world scale applicability. Someone else touched on the growth of the population on the planet, and by 2050 that we'll have 9 billion people. And that requires that we double the agricultural output on the planet. And that requires water and irrigation and advanced techniques all around that. So the idea of water management, I think, is very appropriate focus for us here in Louisiana. We're seeing great success across the digital spectrum, and in advanced manufacturing. I've touched on Seller, but so many other companies that we could talk about. But maybe one of the flagships, Boeing, building the Space Launch System right outside New Orleans at the Michoud Assembly Facility Center. Louisiana is a leader. Louisiana can continue to dominate in these fields. We do it through partnership. We do it through understanding of the elements that are changing around us and making those adaptions. But the best way that we do it is through this idea of working it together. And I consider all our economic development efforts to be a team sport. And there's not a project that lands in Louisiana. It lands in one of the communities in Louisiana. So the better connected we are, the more prepared we are with our certified sites, with the things that we do for not just small businesses, but with economic gardening and CEO roundtables to help our small to mid-sized companies reach that next level. Those are all things that we're engaged in, and very pleased to be your partner. We need about 6 or 7 more hours for this discussion, but I'm going to yield now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Will Labar is Vice President of Consulting Services and is head of GCI's Lafayette operations, and I know it's one of the companies people talk about here all the time, so we're anxious to hear from you. He has nearly 20 years' experience in the IT industry, specializing in transforming government by implementing digital and citizen-centric services designed to streamline information sharing among stakeholders, increase engagement, and enable mission support while reducing regulatory burden. So we're anxious to hear from you.
Thank you very much. So I want to thank the advocate for the chance to speak to you all. It's a very intimidating panel that I'm up here for an IT guy, so I'll do my best. But if you're not familiar with CGI, we're a global IT provider. We have about 74,000 members around the world. And if you want to simplify what we do, you've heard a lot of it in the remarks here, is we help commercial and government clients solve complex problems using information technology. And if you look at our space, you will see digital transformation occurring in every sector, as Secretary Pearson spoke, and I felt like he was reading off my notes, actually. I need to go before you next time. But if you look in the healthcare industry and how David is interacting with citizens in Lafayette and all over the state of Louisiana. If you look into financial services and how we're making decisions, if you look at governments and how to interact with citizens, how we use technology in order to predict potential issues when storms are coming and resilience of communities, the tech sector is an enabler across all of these spaces, and it's causing huge amounts of disruption and innovation. And to kind of bring that home locally to Acadiana, in 2014, CGI made a commitment here to have 400 jobs in the community, and in 2018, we made the commitment to double that. And those jobs are a testament to the partnership that Secretary Pearson was talking about between ourselves, LED, UL, SLCC, LEDA, and many of our community partners here. And in addition to those jobs, we make a huge investment in STEM education, which is another key component of, I think, economic development within the region. When you think about the future of the tech sector here in Lafayette, I think we have a really incredible foundation from which to build. We have the university system and community colleges. We have the recent wins with CGI, Waiter, Proficient, thousands of tech jobs that are currently existing here already. And then what I think we really need to do is be focusing on how to take that ecosystem of that talent and build more organic connections across large and small businesses. I'd never heard the term connectography before, but I think that's one of the unique strengths of this region. We have a very uniquely sized city and very close partnerships that I think if we can capitalize on our educational frameworks, the tech sector that's growing here, our economic development partners, we can move faster and more nimbly than the communities that we're competing against. And I think that's going to be a key thing for us in the future. I sort of lost my train of thought there, sorry. But so essentially, I think we're really well poised in order to continue to grow within the tech sector. I think I would probably close it out with maybe probably the place where I think we need to invest, and that's in our educational system. I don't think that we can win the war for talent if we can't attract people to relocate to this area, to attract people to come back to this area, if we don't have the quality of life, if we don't have the strength in our educational system in order to make them understand that this is a place we want to raise a family and you want to build a career. And I think it all starts at the educational system. It is the lifeblood, is the coin of the realm. I love that phrase. It's what builds the workforce here. And there's no way the tech sector is going to survive unless we continue to invest more in our educational system here locally. I thought I will yield at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Natalie Harder was named Chancellor of South Louisiana Community College in 2012. Later that year, she led the historic merger of the college with multiple campuses of Acadiana Technical College. She serves on one Acadiana's CEO Advisory Council as well as its executive committee.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who recognized the hard work of the SLCC team. And Will, if anyone has ever seen your handwriting, you don't have to worry that anybody's reading it. There's a reason you're good at the keyboard, I'm sure. So for those of you who may not be familiar, SLCC is in nine parishes in Acadiana. We cover 6,200 square miles. And that's important because there is a lot of discussion today about disruption and innovation, and we have to do it all the way from Houma to Ville Platte. And that is the truth with community colleges all around the country because, you know, higher education as a whole is in sort of the same environment that healthcare is. And there are a lot of ways that I could mirror the discussion that David Calicott brought to you this morning. Our job is how do we be relevant? The discussion about the importance of workforce means that we have to retool and rethink how it is that we're serving business and industry every single day. I'll tell you that our number one job is to serve students, and how you serve students is to make sure that they leave us with the ability to embark upon a career, whether they transfer to ULL, or they go right into workforce, into something that is high wage, high demand, and contributes to the economy of Louisiana. There are a lot of good jobs in our community and across our state, and quite frankly across this country. but how do we make sure that individuals, whether they're just out of high school or they're 26 years old, which is the average age of our students, that they're ready and prepared to skill up and understand the importance of skilling up. And for us, in this community, it is a constant conversation about the fact that high school is no longer the finish line, that you have to go on to get some post-secondary something if you're going to compete for a decent job and also contribute to society. Just a note about SLCC's growth. We served about 16,000 students last year, and our fastest growing segment is in the non-credit segment, because part of our disruption is that education is everywhere. You can learn how to code in 6th grade on YouTube. So how is it that I then convince somebody who's 30 years old and been laid off from the oil field that they should come back to us and spend 2 years to get a degree? We have to be different. We have to, I tell my folks all the time, it's about being the Uber of higher ed. It's what they want, where they want, when they want it, and at a price that makes sense for us to continue to support rigorous content delivery. Our job is really to serve the business and industries that you see here. We continue to work at that. All community colleges do. I see Mr. Zuschlag sitting in front, and every day it's how he needs more EMTs and paramedics. And the good news is that he reflects a lot of what you see here, and that is progressive thinking on their end, not just sitting around waiting for more students to be produced, but doing an online program so that they can touch those folks who want to learn how to do those things, you know, from a asynchronous environment. I'd leave you with the fact that you really should be thinking about community colleges as canaries in the coal mine when it comes to what happens in terms of economic activity. And a great example of that is right now the most activity for us is in the maritime division. We cannot keep up with all of the training requests from big companies, you talked about oceaneering, to do certification, Coast Guard certifications and such down in St. Mary Parish. So that tells me that there are things happening in that environment that we need to pay attention to as a community and as a state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joe Zanko is Chief Financial Officer and Executive Vice President of Home Bank Corp. A CPA and certified internal auditor, he began his career as controller and principal accounting officer of Iberia Bank, and made the move to Home Bank in 2008. He serves as a trustee at Lafayette General Health System and Lafayette General Medical Center.
Thank you. All of the presentations thus far have been very interesting and insightful. This one won't be. Because I get to talk about banking. And I'm going to start on a national level, and I'll drill down very quickly locally. Ultimately, nationally, banking is doing very well. You've got an economy across the country that is expanding at a rapid pace. Couple that with tax reform, and it was a strong year of profits for the banking industry in 2018. Now, if you own bank stocks, you may be asking then, why is my bank stock down 10 to 20%? It's ultimately because of the fundamentals of our industry right now. We make money by loaning money at long-term rates and paying our depositors short-term rates. And typically there's a great deal of distance between those rates. Well, because of a flat interest rate yield curve environment, we're seeing net interest margin compression. So don't call me and ask me why our stock is down. It's because of that. That's going on in the industry right now. Ultimately, you guys know this, is the banking industry's investments have been in the technology space. You're seeing branches shut down across the country at a rapid pace. You guys want our branches to be there when you need them to be there, but otherwise you're doing your banking on your mobile phone. Drilling down to South Louisiana, ultimately, South Louisiana banks have weathered the downturn very well. There were a few banks with higher concentrations of oil and gas loans that took some hits, but they're strong enough, they'll make it out of the fog. Bad loans in our state are now down and are stable. When you look at profits for South Louisiana banks, they're stable, but they are lagging national banks because of the slower Louisiana economy. The challenge we have in our industry is we only grow when the communities we serve grow, and Louisiana has been slower than across the country. What we hear from clients of ours that choose to take their businesses and move to another state is they're tired of seeing their taxes increase, and they're tired of getting sued. For us, it's a reminder that we're not a monopoly in Louisiana, and if we want to see more inflows of human beings and jobs, we're going to have to adopt more business-friendly practices. As it relates to our own bank, Home Bank, our sweet spot is serving business. We've been very fortunate that some of our competitors are increasingly sending their clients to 1-800 numbers, their business clients, and you'll take that for so long, but eventually you want to talk to a human being. And we've seen the opportunity to take share in that space because we still believe in providing a personalized level of service. Ultimately, in banking right now in South Louisiana, it is a great time for customers because there aren't that many great lending deals. So whenever you've got a good loan that you want, every bank wants it. So you get a good rate. And you may have noticed in the market lately that CD rates and deposit rates are increasing, so you can finally get paid better rates on your CDs. Despite the challenges that we have in our state right now, our company is firmly committed to Louisiana because ultimately we do believe in the resilience of the people in this state, resilience that's certainly been on full display in the last 3 or 4 years. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Greg Gautreaux began his career as an economic developer with Gulf States Utilities in Lake Charles in the 1980s. In 1995, Greg was appointed president and CEO of the Lafayette Economic Development Authority. He also serves on the board of several organizations such as Lafayette Central Park and One Acadiana.
I was showing Joe that I gave myself 6 minutes. I figured after Flo went 13 minutes and 24 seconds, I was safe.
I find it funny that you're calling her out for that.
You're right. Can't say hello in 3 minutes. Okay, so people want to know about the numbers from me, generally speaking, and so we have anecdotes that go behind the numbers, and we have numbers that go behind the numbers. But we're going to just talk about numbers and give you a little overview of what is going on in the economy. But I'm going to tell you that the punchline is going to come first, and that is we are doing much better, and we're going to be doing better than that. And the reasons are many, as you've heard before, but there's great optimism, and attitude is everything. For those of you, and there are none of you in the room that wake up mad every day, move away, for goodness sakes, because attitude is everything. Is there a city councilman in the house? Raise your hand if you're a city councilman, city parish councilman, and we need more of them. So, anyway. Conrad, thanks for being here. Parish-wide elected official, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I need a rate reduction on my house. Economic Performance Index. We take 16,000 data points, combine them into 15 or 16 indicators, and give you what Harvard does for the nation, and we call it the Economic Performance Index. The Economic Performance Index, September 2018, we're not quite ready to give you the end of the year numbers yet. Retail sales just came in last week, is 106.34. That's up 0.2% from the year before. During the downturn in oil and gas since June 2014, the EPI has dropped 10.4%. The lowest point was 15.9% in 2017. If you're wondering about how that compares to the Great Recession, in the Great Recession, we had dropped 13.8% in 1 year. So actually, overall, we've done better than during the Great Recession. And if you look at the all-time low, that was 1999 at 95% or 95 points, and the all-time high, 2006 at 131. So 106 is firmly in the sort of orangish, greenish, chartreuse area there on the chart. But it's, for goodness sakes, it's so much better than it was. And let's look at a few highlights of why that is, a current indicator. I hope you saw the news last week that we finished up 4.4% in retail sales in the parish, and therefore hit $6.05 billion in retail sales, making 2018 the second highest year in the history of Lafayette Parish in retail sales. Let me say that again, second highest year in the history of Lafayette Parish in retail sales. And by community, the smaller communities did really well, and yes, the unincorporated areas went up 4.4% in retail sales. I'm going to swing through this because it's my job and I'm the community cheerleader, but this is the shopping hierarchy. Locally owned business first, locally owned franchises second, regional national chains with local stores third, online with vendors who collect local sales tax fourth, and other online vendors fifth. If you follow that hierarchy, we're going to be better off than we were in 2018. The trend is away from that. I'm asking you to think through this and please spread the gospel to your employees and your spouses. I'm working on my wife still every day. Real estate. I think it was mentioned earlier that we reached the $1 billion mark in real estate sales last year for the first time in the history of Acadiana. That surpassed the 2015 high by $35 billion. Lafayette Parish did $755 million of that $1 billion. Of course, the guys that wake up mad every day say, wow, that's a lot of homes sold. I say, that's a lot of homes bought. Workforce. The Lafayette MSA overall is still down 18,000 jobs. Now, it's better than it looks, but we've still got to create over the next many years another 10 to 20,000 jobs to get even stronger than we were when it dropped off, and I'll explain why. We regained 6,900 jobs from a high of about 25,000 lost since 2017, which was the low point. So we're doing much better, and that's why 2018 people got back to buying things locally. The MSA is down 10,000 energy jobs, and so you can see that has caused the other 8,000 jobs to be lost. Those things may or may not turn around, but what has turned around is unemployment. And in unemployment numbers, where we are right now is the MSA has got 4.3% unemployment, and Lafayette Parish is at 3.9% unemployment. And that is by far, you just turned me off?
I put you on repeat.
Oh, awesome, thank you. Lafayette Parish is down to 3.9%. Why? Okay, unemployment's low, employment is lower, and retail sales are up and home sales are up. What it means is that over in Lake Charles and over in Baton Rouge and over in Midland, Odessa, people are working and bringing income back here, but their gross domestic product, their GDP, is being created over there. That's why GDP is down and employment is down in our market, but unemployment's low and income is pretty stable or up. So in case people don't understand that, that's a pretty quick and simple explanation, and I'll try to run through the rest of this really quickly. Yes, we've diversified, and we've tried to diversify with the energy business. David Calicott and Fence to Make. Y'all having a good time over there? And so in the 80s, we were 70% dependent on oil and gas. Today, it's 32%. That means direct dependence on oil and gas. We've tried to diversify, as I say, with energy, not away from energy, and I think that's very important. The waiter announcement, the CGI announcement, LHC 500 new jobs, et cetera, and more to come, right, Don? More to come, right, Don? Are all great opportunities to diversify the economy. The Opportunity Machine addresses that incubator, accelerator need. We need more investment capital. The announcement by the governor was wonderful. I think Chris Moe wants to lead a group into an entrepreneurial capital investment, seed investment panel, and I think that's very exciting. And then finally, we have done a good job of diversifying. We feel like medical leads the way, now the #1 employer in Lafayette Parish. Don't forget entertainment. Entertainment's a great way to diversify your economy, and there are plenty of people that make plenty of money in entertainment, and our job at the incubator and other places is to help them learn how to make more money and do it here. And I'll close with, remember, the future is bright and attitude is everything. Thank you, and that was a lot shorter than Flo.
Thank you, boy. Thank you. Matt Sias received his insurance producer license from the Louisiana Department of Insurance in 2015. He has multiple years of experience in insurance, state and government insurance contracts, and accounting procedures. As owner of MSJ Insurance Agency, he brokers insurance for commercial and personal clients. He recently founded an organization called the Millennial Networking Group and serves as its executive director. Thank you.
Good morning. How y'all doing this morning? Alrighty. I find it very interesting. I'm looking across and I see only one device here. We be talking about technology and advancement, and I see all my panelists up here with no devices or technology up here. I thought it was extremely interesting as a millennial. But speaking from, so I basically found an organization called the Millennial Networking Group, and we're doing some things in entrepreneurial space. But I come to talk to you guys a little bit about some things that's going on in insurance industry. One thing, I spoke to James Dolan yesterday. He's the commissioner of the Louisiana Department of Insurance. And I asked him, what should I talk about? Because I didn't know, what to talk about. So he told me that right now he's trying his best to help us with insurance rates. I know that's a big thing right now. Insurance rates are high across lines with personal lines and commercial lines. I have an update right now that workers' comp will receive a 5.6 decrease in May, and so that's across lines on with all workers' comp companies in Louisiana. And so also this is one thing that I'm not going to be too long. I'm very boring when it comes to insurance. I know it's not something most people want to talk about, but State Farm has done something very interesting, that they took a decrease recently. I think that's a start right now across lines. After talking to Mr. Dolan, that now we're going to see more companies come to the state of Louisiana because of that. Basically, State Farm is one of the largest insurance companies in the state of Louisiana right now, and so what's going to happen is the reason why rates are so high in the state of Louisiana is because we don't have a lot of options and there's not a lot of competition. So one person, which is somewhat State Farm, can dictate the market. So which we shall see soon, that insurance rates shall take a large decrease, which shall help a lot of people in the economy right now. Also, one thing that we do have a problem is that this state is very litigious, and this state is a litigious state, and so that we should see that law change, hopefully. That's something that they're working on. I know that James Dolan and Patrick Bell talked about that, and so we should see insurance rates decrease over time. I know that they're working very hard on that, and that's what I have from Commissioner Dolan.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think I go on.
We saved Joe Savoy for last, and he has been a great friend of the Advocate since I've been with the Advocate. He's president of the University of Louisiana at Lafayette since 2008 and is a former commissioner of higher education for Louisiana. Prior to his appointment in 1996 as the state's Commissioner of Higher Education, he served in many roles at the UL Lafayette campus, including Vice President for University Advancement, Executive Director of the Alumni Association, Program Director for the Uniform Program Council, and Student Government Advisor, as well as an Adjunct Assistant Professor. And hopefully we've saved the best for last.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I want you to know that the university is committed to economic development. That was just demonstrated when Greg Grocho turned my vice president for research into a manservant to bring him some coffee. We'll go to any length to make sure that economic development continues in our community. The higher education industry is changing like all the other industries that have been described this morning, brought about primarily from technological advances. And this new economy is rewarding people who have higher levels of education, and it's punishing those who don't. And it's not just about income, it also affects health status, it affects the quality of life, it affects the opportunities for their children. So education has never been more important in this modern economy than it is right now. And as Natalie mentioned earlier, some sort of post-secondary credential is necessary if you're going to participate in this economy. Now, what are some of the challenges for higher ed? New delivery models are coming about. Cost controls are very important because people have many options. We have to make sure that, particularly in Louisiana, with the rapid increase in tuition, that we have the right kind of financial aid and need-based aid support for students, that we're priced competitively, that we provide support. Completion is a big issue in Louisiana. We enroll a considerably a fairly competitive number of our high school graduates. About half go on to college, but only about half of them complete their credential. So completion is an issue, and so colleges are working real hard to make sure that once they have a student, that it's more than just enrolling them, it's about supporting them and making sure that they successfully complete. Another challenge that Louisiana has, and I think nationally in some cases, is the disparate participation of students. Right now, we're at about 60% female and 40% male. That's a good thing for females. It's not a good thing for males. And you've got a lot of young males out there who are not getting the kinds of credentials that will make them competitive in the marketplace. So that disparity is broken down even further from minority groups, from socioeconomic groups. And so we've got to get more of our young people and older people into or back into higher education in some regard. So some of the things that concern us are Louisiana's economy, because that affects state funding for colleges and universities. State funding affects tuition rates that colleges and universities charge, and that affects participation rates by citizens. So all of those things are important, and those are some of the issues that we're going to be facing in the future.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the questions and answers, we'd like to hear a little bit more from our sponsors, starting first with Richard Zuschlag of Acadian Companies. You want a microphone?
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Peter.
You have to have a microphone, otherwise you're not appreciated.
I just want to say thank you to the Morning Advocate for bringing the summit over to Lafayette, to Judy T. and John George. I'm a big fan of the Advocate. I can remember as a 25-year-old when the Chamber of Commerce had a dinner at the Hyman Center with 1,000 people when Edwin Edwards first took the governorship. And Mr. Doug Manship from Baton Rouge, who was in his mid-70s, sat at the same table. He drove all the way over to Lafayette to see what the new governor was going to have to say. So I started paying attention to the Advocate back then, and I think it'll be probably the credible source of statewide news for years to come. So I'm glad that they're hosting this summit for us today. I'm excited to be here with a distinguished panel to discuss the future of the economy in our region. Although I should give fair warning, Ronald Reagan used to say that if Trivial Pursuit were designed by economists, it would have 100 questions and 3,000 answers. With so many panelists, you're bound to get a lot of opinions today, and I suppose there's a little bit of accuracy in what each one has to say. Just remember, economic forecasters assume everything except responsibility. So while they offer their insight, observations, and opinions, we should not be held liable when things don't happen as we predicted. Now I want to make just a couple comments about Acadian. In 2019, we're going to transport about 700,000 patients by ground and another 4,100 by air. Our security division continues to add customers and expand their offerings for home and business security, automation, video cameras, and access control. Acadian Total Security is now the largest security company in the state of Louisiana. Safety Management Systems is adding services and geographies. SMS has also expanded its reach beyond the traditional oil and gas sector. We are now working on environmental projects in California and construction projects up in Boston. I also want to thank Dr. Natalie Harder for all the work that you've done to help us with our EMT and paramedic training. That will continue to be a challenge for us as we go forward, but we're very grateful for the hard work that the local community college has put into it, and it's under your great leadership. Finally, as Acadian approaches our 50th anniversary in 2021, developing our company's future leaders will be of vital success for us to continue. Of all the accomplishments that I've been involved with, I'm most proud of our ESOP, Employee Stock Ownership Program. Our ESOP has allowed our employees to grow and benefit as our company finds success. I've often said, I really don't think Acadian would be successful if we'd started this company in other parts of the country. It's the excellent work and ethics and caring attitudes of the people of Acadiana who have driven our success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Richard and Acadian have been great friends of The Advocate and also very influential in starting up our business coverage and our daily business newsletter, and we really appreciate that. The one thing, I hate to disagree with you and Ronald Reagan, but I don't think the Russians could have invented Trivial Pursuit. Our last sponsor is Entergy, and we're glad to welcome Jody Montalaro, who is going to...
Jody is not able to join us.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry. Okay.
I'll step in
I
for
kept
him.
looking around.
So we really appreciate the opportunity to sponsor this and the great work that Advocate's doing. We appreciate the coverage. I want to highlight two things that Entergy is doing with regard to economic development. First of all is when you go to louisianasiteselection.com, it's a tool that allows businesses that are looking for new expansion opportunities or greenfield opportunities in the state to find the sites that they need. It combines GIS data, demographic data, and business analytics to provide those tools for businesses to find that place to expand. That tool was created by Entergy in 2008 and is being used by the state and other economic development groups. Importantly, because we believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, that tool is available to everyone, whether you are served by Entergy or otherwise. It's an important tool for attracting businesses. And because growing businesses need high-quality employees, the second thing I'll highlight is our commitment to education. Last year, Entergy contributed nearly $10 million in charitable contributions in the state of Louisiana. About half of that went to education. And it's a comprehensive program. We start by focusing on early childhood education, because if a child is not ready to learn when they arrive at school, they'll fall behind very quickly, so it's important that they are prepared to learn. We also focus on primary and secondary education with tools like City Year, Teach for America, that allow us to offer a high-quality education regardless of where your zip code may be. And then we're also focusing on universities such as the University of Louisiana, my alma mater, and LSU, Southern University, but we're also focusing on programs because college isn't for everyone, but as been noted by the panel, we also need certification. So we're working with our technical colleges to provide programs to ensure we have a high-quality workforce that's available for good paying jobs, good wages, and great growth in the state of Louisiana. Again, thank you for the opportunity to support this program.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Now I'm going to turn the program over to Kristen and Adam, and we're going to take some questions, and eventually we're going to get to questions from our online audience.
Good morning. So earlier Will mentioned how difficult it was following Secretary Pearson. I'd like for you to imagine just for a moment how I feel right now. As all of my homework and my expertly crafted questions have been systematically answered by the smart people at this table. So we're going to wing it a little bit. And I have a secret weapon, and that is some of our advocate readers who have been texting and emailing me really smart questions over the last couple of days. So we're going to ask some of their questions. Adam has been furiously taking notes, and he's got a few questions. But also, I'd invite anyone in the audience, don't wait until the end. If you have questions, please just, give a wave. And we have a microphone that I think we can bring to you so that people in our viewing audience can hear you as well. Okay, so to our reader questions. One of our readers asked, we mentioned earlier, low natural gas prices have fueled industrial growth in Baton Rouge and Lake Charles. So what is the potential for the Acadiana area to benefit from this as well? Greg, you want to take that?
Sure, I'll take a shot. Well, first of all, we're already benefiting from the fact that plants are being built in Baton Rouge area and in the Lake Charles area, and in a time when the prices fell through the floor of oil and gas, gas has generated thousands of jobs in Louisiana. And so it's nothing for a person to commute. That's why you saw a tremendous number of automobiles purchased at the beginning of 2016. And it was because, and on a little into the year, and it was because people were unfortunately losing their company vehicles, but they were getting, gas efficient vehicles to make that commute. And so because of the low, we used to have what I considered a perfect situation with high price of of oil, but a lower price of natural gas. People don't realize that oil was probably $100 when people were making plans to build LNG plants. But the LNG plants became really, really important when all the prices dropped and we were allowed to export oil. We've been allowed to use LNG terminals for other reasons over the years. I think it's important to understand that we just need a little higher gas, but it's oil price that really affects us directly.
I've got a comment or two as well. I think that part of what we're seeing, we are seeing some activity related to that across Acadiana in our project pipeline. We're seeing it as expansion opportunities. I don't think companies are at this point looking for to put greenfield projects in the ground because of the uncertainty of it. Greg's point to the oil price is spot on. I remember about 30 years ago hearing the CEO of Delta Airlines speak, and he made the comment that if oil prices ever hit $50 a barrel, the airlines industry would shut down. I've always thought that was pretty funny looking at where things are today. But that more directly impacts us in Acadiana here than the natural gas prices.
All right, this is for Secretary Pearson. The Trump administration's ongoing tariff dispute with China has been detrimental to the economy, depending on foreign trade. What's the prognosis for the rest of 2019?
Yes, I know the answer. No, the premise is correct that Louisiana is far more vulnerable than most states to this tariff situation, largely because we aggregate here all the agricultural products that come down the Mississippi. We transload them at our port systems and ship them globally. So when the agricultural prices fall, it hurts our farmers, it hurts farmers across our nation. When our transport of product on board to vessels slows down the activities at our ports, that hurts our ports and our port systems, and so it has been challenging. Now, if I look to several elements, they can give me a certain degree of optimism. First of all, we have completed our renegotiations with Canada and Mexico. So there is evidence that these issues can and will be resolved. Certainly there's ongoing conversations in depth with China, and there have been for a number of months now. And the motivation is on both sides to bring this to a fair conclusion. It is just as detrimental to their economy to be in this slow growth mode as it is for the U.S. to endure these challenges that are disruptive for our agricultural communities. Certainly the price of steel has impacted things in Louisiana. Again, we import a lot of steel that moves across our docks, that generates revenues, so we face some challenges there. Now, I do understand the President's strategy to preserve a fundamental basic industry in our nation. We concur with that, and we believe that the federal administration is working diligently to resolve the tariff and trade issues, and I believe that this is a short-term event relative to one that's months as opposed to years in moving forward. So we'll remain cautiously optimistic that we will see some agreements with China. China is a major investor in the U.S. that has not slowed down their appetite to continue to expand their footprint, and we welcome the foreign direct investment here in Louisiana.
If I could add to that, first of all, I agree with everything that was said. It's important to know that when businesses look at expansion or greenfield opportunities in the state of Louisiana, for all the reasons we talked about, the low gas prices, quality workforce, outstanding infrastructure, those kinds of things, the challenge is that these tariffs create uncertainty. And for businesses, uncertainty is very difficult to get over. So one of the things that we're looking at, and by the way, we've made trips to Asia the last couple of years, because when you're talking about a lot of the industry that in manufacturing is coming to Louisiana, a lot of that is focusing on export. And Asia is the #1 place that will be going. And so we've made trips to Asia with China, Taiwan, Japan, Korea as our focus. And what we find is that while there is still great opportunity for the state of Louisiana for investment and so forth, I do think there is a risk that businesses are stalling on some of the investment decisions because of these tariffs. They're waiting to see what the outcome is, and that's not a good thing for the state of Louisiana, nor is it for the U.S. The second effect on this is if you've seen the level of investment on these projects, for instance, Formosa down the river from Baton Rouge has a $9.4 billion project. The tariffs have an effect on that. These folks make a decision based upon what they believe the economics will be at that time, and then the tariffs come in place, and we're seeing on our own projects, you talked about the power plants we're building, and we're also using a lot of steel and aluminum for transmission. We're seeing about a 5 to 10% increase in those costs. Near term, we may see additional price increases as a result of that. It's not just the price, the tariffs itself, there's pricing power that comes with those tariffs that are increasing prices as well. But a $9.4 billion project that sees that type of pressure on that can change the economics, and that's a concern. So the sooner we resolve these tariff issues, the better off the state of Louisiana will be and better off the U.S. will be.
Okay, the next question is about health care. What is the true economic picture of the Medicaid expansion experiment to your organizations and to your understanding of its impact on the state's financial status and future?
I guess that's me.
That's you.
So,
You want me to chime in about your interview?
No, Bill. No, thank you. Medicaid expansion has had a dramatic impact on the state of Louisiana, and regardless of their politics, the reality is that more people have some form of health care coverage today than they did prior to Medicaid expansion. So what that has done, though, for our state is that it has, certainly in year one, it was a 100% federal program, and as the years have went by, greater and greater amounts of state general funds are required to come up with the 10% that's required from the state to pay for the expansion population. So we've had hundreds of millions of dollars of new funding go into the system because of this. But the reality is that Medicaid expansion was great in that it gave people a card that had Medicaid on it. What it didn't do is produce more providers. It didn't produce more primary care physicians. It didn't produce more nurse practitioners. And so what we have seen is we've seen a great influx of new money into the system, but they're utilizing the highest cost services in the system in many cases to get that care. So hospitals across the state have seen huge increases in the number of emergency room visits because there's simply no access for these patients. So one of the things that we've done as a system is that we have on our own dime increased the number of internal medicine, family practice, nurse practitioners and PAs at our University Hospital and Clinics campus here in the community, greatly expanding access for the Medicaid population. I think as a state, we have to not only think about, the issue of getting the increased expansion with Medicaid, we also need to be thinking about what is the best use of those funds and how are we spending those funds. We currently have 5 managed care organizations that administer the Medicaid program in the state. Is that too many? Perhaps. Does it become very difficult to have sort of a unified approach in improving the health and wellness of that community? Absolutely. And so I think as a state, we have to evolve to where we're really looking at dealing with the value that we're creating and how can we incentivize providers, whether that's physicians or hospital systems, to really change the game in terms of how we're spending those Medicaid dollars. I'll just give you one example. The big healthcare sort of topic right now is social determinants of health. Okay, so health can be derived in many ways, but in many cases, it directly results from, do you have access to adequate housing? Do you have food security or food insecurity? Do you have transportation issues? Do you have familiar or support for the individual? And so, one of the things I think as a state we have to deal with is those social determinants of health. At Lafayette General, we spent less than $200,000 dealing with social determinant healths in this community, those issues I just talked about. By dealing with those issues, we reduced the spending for that Medicaid and uninsured population in Lafayette Parish by almost $12 million on a $200,000 investment. Those are the kind of things, the innovation that needs to occur across our state. I certainly hope that the administration, Secretary Gee, will continue their efforts to look at new ways for us to provide care for that population. Going forward, we certainly have the increased cost of the Medicaid expansion, and certainly, while I never want to deal with another budget cliff, again, don't even like that word. It is something that we need to be cognizant of, and we need to look at how we spend that money and spending it more, more efficiently in the future.
Can I make a quick point? There is a clear correlation between educational attainment and health. If we want to reduce what this state is spending on healthcare costs, we need to move out of 49th out of 50 states in terms of educational attainment. It is about education.
All right, those to you, Dr. Savoy. In 2015, Lafayette ranked 25th on best performing cities, an index created by the Milken Institute. For 2018, they dropped to 196 out of 200 cities. In fact, Lafayette ranked dead last in 2 categories that survey measured: 5-year job growth and 5-year wage growth. What do you see that might indicate an improvement in those areas over the next 5 years?
Well, the Milligan Institute's evaluation dealt with opportunities for historically underserved populations and their possibilities, and the university ranked very high in that, and we continue to work hard to make sure that those who haven't had opportunities or provided those opportunities, that we give them support so that they can be successful. I think a lot of the results of the dropping has to do with the state of the economy, which Greg reviewed. Now that's begun to stabilize and to improve, and so we think that those things will get better. That's one of the reasons that the university and the community college, great partner, are so involved in economic development. We know that people who have jobs can pay their bills, they can take care of their children, they can contribute to their community, and they can make the university and the community college better. It's a symbiotic relationship. The university doesn't exist on an island, neither does the community. We can both be better if we help one another. So we continue to do everything that we possibly can. Ramesh Kallaru, who I took a little jab at earlier, our Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Economic Development, pretty much sits in Greg's lap most of the day trying to get things done. So we're going to continue with that commitment.
Quite a visual, Joe.
That's what I meant, Santa Claus.
Can I add to that?
Please do.
Dr. Savoy is right. The diversification of our economy, the education of our workforce is the only way out. The only thing that's discouraging about that is because the education of our workforce hasn't improved a lot over the years other than certifications. I mean, we are, and what I'm talking about is outcomes, numbers, rankings by state. In terms of diversification, we've done that. We have diversified a lot, as alluded to earlier. The university has diversified. SLCC has diversified. You will not see a more responsive group of organizations to economic development and workforce needs than our local higher education system. But we still have failed in the numbers to get out of that bottom tier of states overall in education. And frankly, I've been here long enough to understand that I don't know how to fix that. That we concentrate on adult education for the reason that we are really taking industry on one type of industry at a time and one company at a time to try to satisfy their needs. I can't find better partners than the folks on this panel and their organizations. And Dr. Kularu is my boss. That's why he knows that I will bring him coffee for the next month or two to pay for this after Dr. Savoy so graciously pointed it out.
And if I may, let me just jump in a little bit behind that. Certainly, the Millikan Institute, a California think tank, makes a credible evaluation of cities and uses their criteria to come forward with this ranking. What you don't get to see is what is the backdrop. You know, the backdrop here was just this falling oil price that still had a very significant impact on what was happening in this region of our state. And at the same time, and we talked a little bit about LNG previously, but part of what was left out of that conversation was that technology allowed geologists who always knew that shale gas was down there to come up with a way to frack it and bring it out. And when they did that, they unleashed trillions of cubic feet of gas in Pennsylvania, in North Dakota, in Louisiana, and in Texas. And it completely changed the dynamic of the energy industry. And so this backdrop is happening while Millikan tells you, well, you're not where you were previously. And they don't have the data now about CGI, about waiter. These are in development. And I will tell you that the path that we're on, and to Dr. Harder's point, it's all about education and workforce, is with the technology in all these areas that are lifting the companies here in Lafayette and across Louisiana. You're going to see these numbers change. I'm fine with the benchmark. Can we do better? Yes. Will we do better? Yes. I think that's important to note here.
Yeah, that Ross Duvall with Millikan's been down here more than once. We celebrated our top 20. You know, there are 13,000 communities in the United States. Last time I counted, 3,200 counties. And we were in the top 25 for many, many years. We celebrated that. It's tough to drop out. It really is tough to, but it's not doom and gloom because, as has been pointed out, not only do we know why it happened, not only do we know we can't control why it happened, but we can control what we can control, and that is diversification, and we've done a great job at that. That's why we're coming back much quicker than we did the last time the bottom fell out.
I'd like to add one more thing to that. Something that Flo brought up, and I believe, Greg, it was about her 13-minute mark is where she brought it up, was community engagement and leadership. And I think she's absolutely spot on with that. And one of the things that I'd like to say that I'm proud of for this region, for Acadiana, is I look in this room and I look at this panel, and almost to a person, everyone is engaged. And now this is a little self-serving, and I apologize for that, but everyone to a person is engaged in the work that we're doing as one Acadiana. Now, that engagement and that leadership is something that you don't see in every community. I'll give you the best example of that, and one of our programs of work is the work, and this must be Praise Natalie Day, but I do believe that every day should be Praise Natalie Day because she does fantastic work. But the 55 by 25 initiative that we've taken at One Acadiana to increase the educational attainment for the region. If you look at where we are right now on advanced educational attainment, we're at about 24%. If you add high-value certifications to that, we hit about the 37% mark. Well, we need to do better. Natalie was spot on with her comment about that. We need to do better. That's going to improve so many things in our region. It's going to make us more attractive for our economic development efforts. It's going to help things on the healthcare side. It's going to help things in a lot of ways. If we did nothing from here on to by 2025, we would hit about the 43% mark. So that leaves us or 42%. That leaves us about a 13% delta that we've committed to cover between now and 2025. And we've done that through engaging not just the business leaders, many of which are here today, but also engaging the school systems across the non-parish region, the superintendents. We've got a tremendous amount of buy-in to that, and a lot of that is due to the leadership that Natalie showed on our Workforce Development and Education Committee, so I applaud you for that.
Thank you very much. I think next up is Kyle Whitfield, who is our digital editor, and he can tell us a little bit about what's going on. We're webcasting this and what's going on with that and in social media. I think you got to.
Kristen, my wife would be proud of me because she thinks I like to hear myself speak so much. But Kristen has a great group of questions that we called together before this, so Kristen, keep firing away.
So, and I have the mic too.
Oh,
so,
okay. Better yet. Okay. All right.
We've had a few people reach out to us on social media, so do not. I'm just asking the questions.
There was a "Don't kill the messenger."
Exactly. First, one person asks, is it likely that we'll see a $100 barrel oil again, or is this $50, $60, $70 barrel or less the new normal?
I want to answer and then let Bill correct me. He loves that.
And he can't help himself, so.
Some time back, we were looking at the numbers, and, you know, in this world, you talk to a lot of economists because they're trying to give you their insight. And I ran across an interesting discussion where it kind of told me why the president at the time was visiting with the president of Russia, and it was, to me, about oil. And they were trying to increase the supply from Russia, in his mind, because of his stance about the Middle East, Iraq, and Venezuela, the problems in Venezuela. It looked like we were headed toward 1 million barrels a day surplus. Last time there was 1 million barrels a day surplus, price of oil was over $100 a barrel. And so I think efforts were being made and have been somewhat successful. Once again, I think it's us that has been successful, in this case in the Permian Basin in North Dakota. But I think that if we head toward 1 million barrel surplus, we can achieve $100 oil. I don't look for that. I think every effort's being made to keep it below. I think also that people in the oil and gas industry say $60 to $70 is a sweet spot to be able to make money, if not the kind of money and expansion people were making at 100.
Greg, I'm not going to disagree.
Thank you.
I'm going to dismiss you altogether.
Maybe I should disagree.
Good job, Doc.
If you look at supply and demand, and the geopolitical forces every week change. It's Venezuela this week or last week. It's Middle East, it's cut production. Russia is going to increase production. And so you have all these factors that come into play with the price of energy. If you listen to the experts, if you want to call them that, at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan, they'll tell you that the average price in 2019 will be around $65 a barrel. And I think Goldman says 65, JP Morgan says 66. So it's going to be somewhere in that threshold. But supply and demand dictates what the price is going to be. I will tell you that over the long term, I think we all know this from this living in Lafayette, that the cost of drilling for oil is going to either change the price because we have increased production, which is going to lower it, or we have less production, which is going to increase it. But the bottom line is, over time, the price will increase because the more we drill, the more we have a lack of success in finding oil and natural gas. I think you're going to see the price increase, and I think it's going to probably be before long, in the next 3 to 4 years, in the $100 range. Someone said a long time ago that the best thing for high energy prices is low energy prices, and that's true. So we'll see. I attended, as I mentioned earlier, NAPE last week, and everybody was very optimistic about drilling. And I think that over the next couple of years, other than Louisiana, I'd have to say, we're going to have more drilling. And the reason I say in Louisiana, and it's startling numbers to me, is that I guess it bottomed in 2017 in October. There were no bids on any of the state lease when people put in bids for state leases, there were no bidders. And then when I look at the amount of acres nominated in 13, 14, and 15 were about 1,663,000 acres, and in the last 3 years we had 495,000 acres leased, that people put in nominations for acreage to drill wells. So that doesn't look very good for us. Is that the future here is that there's going to be less drilling, and South Louisiana is going to lead that. North Louisiana is going to change that a little bit because we have some opportunities in North Louisiana that maybe we just don't have. And if you think, well, okay, it's the price is the reason. Well, Texas has had increased production, increased revenues from energy. So I don't think that's quite the answer. I think it has something to do with our legal climate. I think it has something to do with the jurisprudence and both the legacy suits that change the dynamics of that. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Thank you. I have a couple more social media questions, but I just want to find out if there are any questions in the audience real quick. Somebody have a mic?
Oops. Thank you.
Oh, can you raise your hand again?
Somebody want to ask a question?
Right out there, Fred.
Over there to the left. To the right.
My question is talking about education and how to improve education. And one of the things that I really have felt in the past is we do not have a good online education system in Louisiana. If you look at basically what has happened with ULL, there have been programs that have started. The MBA program has just recently started online. My successor went through it, and now she's chief financial officer of a company. So our education can improve online. People are not willing to go to school because they're going to lose the money that they make. But an online system would make a lot of difference from that standpoint. The second thing is the cost of it, the tuition of it. I would eliminate the out-of-state tuition that goes along with that to encourage people from out of state to be involved with the online system in Louisiana, which might encourage people to come here to Louisiana to work as well. On the other side of it, and that's on higher education, on the lower side, I would encourage our leaders to get involved with all the churches. Kids go through Sunday school to learn how to read, and our best start for education is at a very young age. And if we had a lot of the churches involved in the education system through Sunday schools and that kind of stuff, might encourage both the parents and and the students to continue their education and not stop at either the high school level and maybe go on to a 2-year or even a 4-year program. This is one thing that I think that we have failed to do from the education standpoint, is get the parents involved in it to encourage their children to go on to higher education. It's been easy for a lot of kids originally in high school to get a good job in the oil industry, make a lot of money, and discourage them from going on to college. So that's my question as to whether we can improve the online system in ULL as well as SLCC, because I think that would really encourage kids to go on for further education. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think you're exactly right, and we've invested significantly in the development of new online programs. The new MBA, 2 options, 3 options, has been our largest growth area in the last couple of years. We had about 1,000 online nursing students are into BSN. So it is certainly a huge market, and a lot of that is out of state. A lot of that is non-Acadiana type enrollment, working professionals who can't afford to stop everything and go to school, who need to continue their education so they can move up in their careers. Currently, about 12% of our enrollment is online enrollment. Our target is to get that up between 15 and 17%, and we're introducing new programs every semester in order to do that. On the out-of-state tuition, you're correct that a few years ago we used to charge out-of-state tuition. Now we have a flat rate for online students, which is competitive with the market. So in-state, out-of-state really doesn't make any difference anymore.
And I would agree with Dr. Savoy. The only thing I would caution is you have to do online right. Just because you can swipe right doesn't mean that you're going to be successful in being self-disciplined to do a course successfully. You'll find that online, completely online colleges have abysmal completion rates. They want to tell you how many students they enroll, but they're in the single digits in terms of completion. So I think the good news is that both ULL and SLCC have been thoughtful in rolling out online programs where we know we've got the support to ensure that students can be successful. And I mean, I will tell you, I mean, we have regions in Acadiana where folks are still on dial-up. It's not an option for them. So we've got to have boots on the ground and offer different kinds of content delivery. But certainly online is in our purview going forward much more.
I just want to add one last thing on the education front, because I think it would be amiss if we didn't reference it on things that we can address, and specifically in STEM fields. And that's diversity in our workforce. Like minorities and women are typically underrepresented in STEM. And so I think one of the other things we need to be focused on here locally is how to build exposure to technology-related areas earlier in those particular demographics, whether it be through our local church system or our local school system, or bringing students into our businesses in order to understand what career opportunities are afforded to them. I think that's a big foundation that we need to continue to build and focus on.
I want to mention something as well, and that is you talked about groups influencing education. You talk about corporate organizations and people influencing education, and Flo touched on this, and as the commercial says, Flo knows. We have a situation here that is, I first brought up probably 4 years ago as a challenge, and unfortunately as of 2017, which is the newest number I have, the challenge really hasn't been answered, and that is community involvement, right? Community involvement. Top 10, the community involvement, there was a thing years ago called CEOs for Cities, and there was a community involvement index. CEOs for Cities only did the top 50 communities in the United States, so it left out the 105 wherever we are. And so we did it ourselves at LEDA, and we do it every time we can get all the numbers and compare apples to apples. And if you look at 2017 community involvement, and this has been steady since we started doing it, quite a while back, 32.6% of Jackson, Mississippi's residents participate in some kind of community involvement, and it is a broad range, whether you're a soccer, person, or whether you go to church and get involved. It is a huge range. New Orleans is 10th at 24.4%. 31% of the population of Houston is involved in a community involvement. Lafayette is 11th at 17.3%. That's half almost of the participation, community involvement in Jackson, Mississippi. It's a solid 10 points below Austin, Texas. Now, it's all rooted there. Lack of education is rooted in the fact that people don't care. Lack of participation in so many things. And so we've got, and 80% of the news media covers what politicians say, with all due respect, but there are none of them in any of these meetings. Well, a few, thank you. But almost none come to any of these meetings to learn about what's going on. And it's really something that I issue to you as a community leader as a challenge to get an elected official to come to one of these, because they are voting on what you want to change and what you want to improve, but they haven't heard this story. They don't know this story, and they're not going to do the research, with very few exceptions, themselves. So if I'm downbeat about one thing, it's the future of elected officials and their psyche compared to the future of what you can do in our community, because we got a great thing and we can go forward, but we can't do it with people that aren't informed and don't care to be informed. So that all ties together, and you put it together nicely, and so did all of you. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna speak on a base. Right now, the Louisiana Department of Insurance is going into the schools and educating kids on insurance. But I'm gonna speak from a minority base right now, being that I'm one of the only minorities up here. I'm gonna speak on the fact that as I sit down and I speak with these kids, they don't actually know what's out there and available to them. I can say that every time I sit in the classroom, these kids don't understand what's actually out there. And so, like he's saying, community involvement and elected officials, but I think that we owe the kids, or the kids that are coming up right now, that we have to actually go out there, not just leaving it to the elected officials. And I'm actually running for District 1 city councilman in this city. Just so that
Are y'all working together?
But what I'm saying is that these kids don't know what's out there, and their parents don't care. I'm not saying their parents don't care about them, but their parents don't care enough on a minority base to bring them towards the resources. And so we have to find an opportunity or a platform where we're reaching them. And I'm not all kids go to church too, so that's another thing. So we have to understand that part too. So my dad's a pastor, a minister, so I'm gonna speak on that base. And I go to church seldomly right now, so being that I'm extremely busy. But what I'm saying is that we have to find a platform in this city where we can reach them directly. I mean, in the minority area. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that is, but I'm just throwing that out there.
I think you've been waiting patiently.
I'm ready. Before I get to my question, I have to say I enjoyed all 13 minutes and 24 seconds of Flo's presentation and learned a lot, so thank you, Flo. One of the things we didn't talk about a lot, I think Secretary Pearson briefly touched on it, is infrastructure. And selfishly, as I think about revitalizing downtown Lafayette, infrastructure is a really important part of that. And so I wanted to ask the panel your thoughts on, and Greg, you kind of touched on this in your last response, what we as community leaders can do to be involved in and kind of guide the conversation about investing in smart infrastructure, whether that be like smart infrastructure or infrastructure that gives us the greatest return on investment, and how that fits into how we develop our economy locally, at the regional level, and then at the state level.
I lost my microphone. There we go. Anita, great question. And I think that one of the things that when you refer to smart infrastructure, you're not just talking about, as you said, smart infrastructure, but looking at what the needs are coming up, not just addressing the immediate needs. And Obviously, that's one of the things that we've had a lot of discussions of as it relates to downtown and developments that'll be coming up there as far as the old federal courthouse and some other developments that are happening there. And there are things that need to be addressed. You know, we obviously at One Acadiana taking a very large approach to infrastructure and trying to figure out what's needed across the region and what the economic impact of those infrastructure projects are. I know you are very well aware of the river document that we've produced and the vetting process we went through with all of the stakeholder meetings that we held to come up with those projects in that. But I think that, I mean, it's obviously we can have the greatest sites, we can have the greatest workforce, but if you can't get to them, or if you can't get your product to market, or you can't get your raw material to your facility, then you've got a significant issue. I don't know what the specific answer is. I mean, I think Secretary Pearson, I think the state right now is looking at about a $14.1 billion backlog on infrastructure needs. We fixed some of that with Amendment 4 that was passed to put the trust back into the Infrastructure Trust Fund. That's a step in the right direction. It's going to come down to funding at some point, and funding on a local level as well as funding on a state level. I was telling somebody the story earlier. I had a friend from that state that we won't mention that came and visited over the holidays, and the first thing he said when he walked into my house was, "Man, isn't part of your job like improving infrastructure?" And so I asked him to leave, and but he couldn't because of the traffic. Yeah. So it is obviously something that we are going to continue to be focused on regionally, and with the regional infrastructure visioning report that we've produced and the 7 spotlight projects that we're putting some strategies on the ground on. Now all we need is about $1.5 billion, and we can make a lot of things happen. So.
Flo mentioned the opportunity zones, which I believe, you know, for Acadiana is one of the greatest opportunities we have in terms of developing areas throughout really the entire region. In the oil center in particular, we have major projects that we're working on right now involving, you know, large expansion of our cancer center of Acadiana, which now is one of the largest cancer programs in the entire state. Also a large expansion of our neuroscience center of excellence, and utilizing the opportunity zone and the credits that come into play. We can't do that in the oil center unless we also have massive investments into the infrastructure of the oil center, which now is at capacity related to its ability to handle sewer and water and stormwater. And so, you know, we have this great opportunity with Opportunity Zone. We're ready and willing and able to make the investments, but the city also and the parish also needs to make the investments in infrastructure to allow that to happen. And so as excited I am about opportunity zones in each one of the parishes that represent an opportunity zone, the municipalities have got to step forward in order to allow those things to happen.
I can add a little bit on the energy side. I think it's important to note that one of the reasons we're seeing significant investment in Louisiana, particularly along the Gulf Coast, is because of the energy infrastructure we have in the state. And so that's very strong. And also want to note what we're doing at Energy Louisiana. We have about a $4 billion capital budget over the next 3 years. We're building 2 new power plants, one in St. Charles Parish, one in Lake Charles. These are about 1,000 megawatts apiece. To give you a feel for how large that is, that's about twice what Lafayette uses on the hottest day of the year. We're also investing heavily in new transmission systems to improve the reliability, to improve efficiency of the grid so that we can actually reduce prices to customers by investing. We're also doing a $106 million transmission project along the I-10 through Jefferson Davis Parish to improve reliability, improve the efficiency of our grid. So there is a lot of investment. I recognize the infrastructure needs for the state are great, but we are doing quite a bit on the energy side.
Thank you. I think Peter lost his mic, so I'm going to say thank you to all of our panelists. I know that we could probably talk about infrastructure for a very long time, yeah, we could. But I think John Georges would like to say a few words to close out our conversation.
I want to thank our 4 sponsors and our 12 panelists. I think we all learned a lot today, and it was very insightful. Lafayette has special leadership. Bill Fensterman reminds me of that all the time. But I want to say a word for the Advocate that we have recommitted, double down on Lafayette, our staff and our coverage. Our goal is to bring you the news either the traditional way at your doorstep 7 days a week with a paper, or the new modern ways with iPhones, iPads, internet, and the like. Today's being telecast and podcast, so people can watch it throughout the week as we do coverage on some of the stories. But we're really pleased to be here, and Lafayette has been a successful part of our state, carried the water for the rest of the state on many matters, and we're glad to be part of the community. And this event was about bringing people together to talk about economic development, and I hope that everybody enjoyed the content and appreciate what we've done. Thank you.